Bashed the shit out of Phil and rang the cops. Phil got 5 years, 3 years non-parole. He kept to himself, didn't join a gang. Inside he had time to think. Not a lot of time to think when you're thieving. Phil had always thought his old man was smart, but now he wasn't sure. His old man had worked on the wharves, tally clerk. A very good job, as his old man would say. Had a pen and clipboard and ticked off what was brought in on the ships. Cargo. And guess what? Sometimes cargo accidentally got broken. Crates fell and were damaged, as was the merchandise inside them. Meant there were often sunglasses or radios or kettles or clothing brought home in the boot of the old man's car. Damaged goods. Sure. The old man always had mates down the pub interested in damaged goods. Phil's old man spent a fair bit of time down the pub. Too many at home, he'd explain. Bloke can't hear himself think. Phil had always thought crime paid, but now he knew it didn't. Big time. When Jimmy and Johnny came to visit him inside, Phil told the boys, "Jimmy, Johnny, I steered you wrong and I feel guilty. I feel responsible. Get a trade, plumber or electrician. You don't want to end up in here." "Not us, don't you worry, Phil." "Yeah, Phil, we know what we're doing. Ultra careful." Phil begged them to change their ways, couldn't handle it if they went down. "Please listen to me." And the boys did. Jimmy became an electrician and Johnny a plumber. About 12 months into his jail time, Phil was called into the superintendent's office. "We're putting you in the garden, mate. You shoveled concrete, so now you can shovel dirt." Phil didn't mind. In fact, it gave him a new lease on life. Stopped him thinking and started him reading. About flowers. All sorts. Especially flowers that like full sun, because that's what they were going to get at the jail. Marigolds and snapdragons, geraniums and zinnias, cornflowers and sunflowers, and bugger me dead, Phil had a green thumb. The garden sprouted colours, orange, white, purple, red, pink, blue and yellow. Sunflowers were definitely his favourite, and boy, could they grow. He had some over 12 feet high, and they were the best yellow. It was like looking at the sun. The Crims were pretty impressed. Gave him some shit like, "We know where the pansy is in that garden, or I'll give you a bunch of knuckles for a bunch of flowers." But they liked the garden, better than the cold hard wall that surrounded them. Way better. Phil kept reading about flowers, and then one day he asked to see the superintendent. "Sir, I'd like to build a greenhouse." "Why?" "Because I'd like to try and grow orchids." Phil had to explain to the super how special orchids were, how they'd been found all over the world, even in the Antarctic. There were more than 28,000 varieties, and they couldn't have the full sun of a Sydney summer on them. They'd die. Super said he'd think about it. Well, of course, Phil got his greenhouse and the jail got orchids, and it was written about in the Sydney Morning Herald. Described Phil as the Orchid Man. So that's what he became known as, the Orchid Man. Phil's family visited him inside. Most of them. His mother cried. His father didn't visit, said Phil had brought shame on the name Quigley. Phil thought shame about that. Shame Quigley was such a stupid fucking name. His brothers and sisters popped in a couple of times a year. No one had much to say. Still, nice they put in the effort. About 18 months into his time, Phil was called to the visitors' room. Wasn't expecting anyone. And there, sitting on a chair at the table, was Maureen. Phil sat down opposite Maureen. Phil stared at Maureen. Maureen stared at Phil. "Hi." "Hi yourself. What are you doing here?" "In the neighbourhood." Phil laughed. "That's funny." "Good. Brighten up your day?" "Reckon." Maureen had lived opposite Phil all his life. She was a couple of years younger, so he'd never paid her much attention. Until he did, when she was around 17. Maureen had never shown any interest in Phil, and anyway, there were always blokes hanging by a gate on their bikes. And then a bit later, they'd bumped into each other at the cinema. Sat together, kissed a bit, groped a bit, did it again a couple of times. But as Phil drifted further into crime, Maureen had drifted away. "I thought you might like a visit. Heard your old man doesn't come." "Nope." "Does that upset you?" "Nope." "Do you want me to go?" Phil looked into Maureen's face. He'd always liked her face. Sure, she was good looking, pretty, but she had a kind face. "Thanks for coming." And he smiled. Maureen came once a month after that, until Phil was released. Then they got married, moved to the Central Coast about 2 hours north of Sydney. Terry Reynolds always wanted to be a cop. Funny that, didn't have a good reason, no big moment. So straight after school he joined the force. When he got through training he knew one thing. Don't get sent to the cross. King's Cross. Drugs, gambling, prostitution. You had to take the paper in the cross. Paper money, corruption.